Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Welcome back to the Design Dash podcast. I'm your co-host, Laura Umansky, here with Melissa Grove. And today's guest is someone whose work I've admired for years, both for its global impact and her unwavering commitment to creativity, culture, and craftsmanship. Patti Carpenter is the principal of Carpenter & Company and the global trend ambassador for Maison&Objet. She's a product designer, trend forecaster, and a connector of worlds from fashion to interiors and Paris to Peru. With a background in fashion and over 2 decades of experience consulting across 60 countries, and I thought I traveled a lot. Patty's crushing it. Her work uplifts artisans, predicts what's next in design, and helps businesses stay relevant and responsible. Her story is a powerful example of what it means to evolve intentionally. And we are all about designing a life you love here at Design Dash. And she also is going to talk about how trusting instincts, passions, and purpose can shape her career and truly make a difference. So Patti, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you both. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yeah. So you started in fashion, like I alluded to.
Yeah.
And then pivoted to international product development and trend forecasting.
Absolutely.
So I love a story of transformation or transition. So what inspired that transition?
It was a really interesting time. I had been in fashion for over 25 years. And when I say I had been in, I started the day after I graduated from FIT, and I worked on those entire years for several different companies. And in working with retailers like the Limited Corporation or Timberland, and designers like Bill Blass or Oscar de Renta, and finally at Ralph Lauren, I learned a lot about the retail side of the business and also the wholesale side of the business. So I had a really holistic approach to what I was doing. And as we say, from concept to consumer, and all the way, from when we first would initiate something to going to the stores and working with customers to see it at the end. And that was a really exciting time because I'm a rather seasoned designer at this point. So I was in the heyday of fashion in the United States. A lot was being done here. I was traveling a great deal to factories all over the world. I was learning a lot about making and about quality and about how one runs a business. Certainly from the people that I work with, definitely were at the top of their game. And what happened in 2000 is that I really started to note the beginnings, because I'd been going to Asia and setting up factories, of fast fashion. And I really wasn't a fan of the mindset of what fast fashion meant to me. And it wasn't just for me about putting more things out in the world. It was about the types of things that were being put out in the world and who they were for and who they were made by. And so at the same time, sort of simultaneously for the last 5 years, from 95 to 2000, I'd been working with an organization at the time that was called Aid to Artisans. They literally in the last couple of months have just changed their name to Handmade to Market, but I still work with them. So 20 plus years later, 25, 27 years later. And they work with artisans around the world, and they help them to connect, which is what we do now with Carpenter & Company, to markets for whatever they make by hand. And so it can help them be a better local market, a better regional market, or a better export market. And that whole idea resonated with me. That meant lifting people up. That meant supporting cultures around the world. That meant economic sustainability for people, as well as cultural sustainability. And that was really something that resonated with me. That's near and dear to my heart. And so I had an opportunity with them to go on my first trip to Africa to work on a 3-year project. And they offered me that right of first refusal for that, because it was a textile project. And of course, coming from fashion, I knew textiles. And I had a moment that said, I needed to make a change in my life. And so I left Ralph Lauren and I went to Mali. And that really is what took me over into this world.
Wow, that's a journey. And so, I mean, it sounds like being like purpose driven is
Absolutely.
a good hyphenate for your career.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so Melissa and I talk about this a lot. Like, what happens when you lose your purpose? For you, you pivoted, you created new purpose. What would your advice be to someone who may be feeling a little lost right now in their career?
It's interesting. I have these conversations all the time because I did make that change, and it's taken me over into a much different world than I even knew existed in terms of home. Everybody told me the people in home were much nicer than the people in fashion.
Is that true?
On many levels, I would say I can agree. But what I find, but
I
when
mean,
I
I find them to be nice, so that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. No, it's an amazing community who has been so open armed with me and embraced me and connected me. And I do find this wonderful way of connecting. I love that you said that in the introduction because I feel that's sort of who I am as a connector. But in terms of talking about pivoting, it was really not something that I was consciously aware of that I was looking for when it happened. But what I do say, because I also teach, I teach at FIT, that my alma mater, and I also teach and talk at other schools around the world. And I talk a lot about this idea of really getting to know who you are and being in touch with those things that are your things that make you different, not just the things that, are like everyone else that's around you, but where are your differences? And especially as you move through your various career choices and your jobs within those careers, what skill sets do you have? Because the skill sets that you have, that's what I found in making that pivot, can be applied in so many different ways, and maybe they can make a bigger impact in another industry than the one that you're in. So being aware of who you are and being aware of what you bring with you, you can bring those things to various places, and how you can utilize them when you get to those places often can speak volumes, I think, as to how you want to put yourself into the world. And that's really what I think is important.
I see pivoting being it's a challenge, right? Because I think that there's this part of, I mean, you knew this world so well and then you're leaving it. And we
Right.
have so many in our community now too. And I think just so many other women who are middle-aged like me, and they're thinking, gosh, I want to do something completely different, but I'm afraid because I
Hmm.
know this world. I
Hmm.
don't know that world. I'm
Right.
interested in that world, but I don't know how to get to that. Like, how did you cross that? Or were you just like, I
Well,
need a change, I'm ready to go?
yeah, well, I think I was ready to go, but wasn't aware so much that I was ready to go until this offer came. And I was lucky because I had been working on that other side, in the background for my own passion for things that I love to do. I was part of this designer roundtable for 5 years with ATA before they made this offer to me. Um, and I think I was blessed in that way that the offer came around something that I felt like I could do but I also like adventure. One of my best friends, who I met at FIT, we have this saying that we always say, would you rather say when you're sitting in your rocking chair and looking back on your life that you had the opportunity to do it or that you did it? And we tend to be those that try it. I don't, failure is just one more stepping stone to the next thing. It's not going to shut you down. And if we allow fear to be the thing that dictates how we move forward, we'll never know what our actual breadth can be. We'll never know what we're capable of. And so that's something that I feel very blessed. I've had parents that I still have them at 91 and 92, that have supported my sister and I, who both have creative careers. She's a director and a writer in film and television, and it's not, those are things that of course have that same up and down. And I think you just have to also get comfortable in the valleys, so that when you do have a dip, you know that you're going to go back up, and get back up to that top again on top of a mountain. Um, but you just have to be comfortable in that with what you know, who you are, what you bring with you. Those things for me are really important.
I love that outlook.
Very
Yeah.
positive. Well, and you talked a little bit about connection too. 'Cause that's what we're
Mm.
big on here at Design Dash, is creating that community and creating that connection. And I mean, how did those connections help you along the way? And I ask this because we work with a lot of solopreneurs,
Yes.
and a lot of pivoters. They just started out or they're on their own, and they're like, how do I break myself in? Like, how do I
Mhm.
build a network in this industry? How do
Yeah.
you advise
I
they do?
think there's several ways of doing it. For me, I have been really blessed that I have amazing mentors in the industry because I did not come from home, and I was very conscious when I moved over. I was a vice president at Ralph Lauren, and I knew I wasn't going to come over into this other sector and be that. I figured I'm okay with starting further down and learning. So I think you have to be comfortable with learning. So putting yourself out there. We were just talking about panels, Laura and I, going to market, meeting people, being open to discussion, finding like-minded groups, being part maybe of industry organizations, which will then give you a community, where you are. I work a great deal with the industry organizations. We take a group from ASID, New York Metro chapter, almost every January now to Maison&Objet. I work with IFDA. I work with IDS. I work with art. So, working with the industry organizations, I think gives you almost a built-in, community when you step in and getting involved, not just being a member, but doing something, and then being there. I think being at some place like High Point Market or the markets that might be where you are. I come out to Dallas. I know you guys are in Houston. I'm at Dallas Market a couple times a year, going and learning, while you're there from not only the people who are coming to visit, your community that way, but also from the vendors, the exhibitors who are there, learning about product, doing those things that are going to give you that education and that expertise that's going to separate you from the pack, if you will, because that's what your clients are looking for. And so just being open, to being able to learn all of that, to take it all in, I think is really important.
So you mentioned Maison&Objet, and so we didn't talk about this, but I went with Meredith Savier.
Oh, okay.
Recently. I don't even know when that was. Melissa, were you with me for this?
You went
Last year?
Okay, great.
It may have been a different visit, but
Okay.
I saw you welcomed us to market. I was with her on her tour with designers.
Yes.
So you were there to welcome us all. And so tell me about Maison and what you're doing with them. Are you an ambassador? Like, what is your role with them?
Well, my title is Global Trend Ambassador. So
Okay.
to a certain extent I am. And that came from us together coming up with that, which I love. I use that. That is my title now. And what I do with them is I work very closely with the marketing team. That's where I come into it. And what I do is I shop the show in a way that most designers and even retailers or anyone who would come to the show is not able to. Meaning I am there all 5 days and I get into every one of the halls that's there. And if you've been, it's a huge
Yes, that's a
show.
big effort.
It's a lot of walking. I walk many thousands of steps a day. I take many thousand pictures, and I kind of straddle between press and an industry, an industry insider, if you will. And so I'm allowed to take pictures. I'm allowed to, I really engage with a lot of the exhibitors, and I talk to them about who and why and how they've done what they've done when they're presenting their product there. And then I come back and I create a reportage. And that reportage is usually 80-ish slides in a PowerPoint presentation.
Wow.
So a lot. And I do them, and I separate them into the categories in the way that I know as a designer you need, because it really is targeted at interior designers, product designers, manufacturers, and retailers. That's who our core audience is. And under that umbrella, I do color. So we talk a great deal about the colors that we see coming out of the show that are trending. We do color palettes, the way we see color working together, because that often is what refreshes what's going on in the world. It may not be that we need these revolutionary changes. We may just need these evolutionary changes, right? So the subtleties of color are really what bring that to the fore. We talk about materials. What do we see trending in materials that are coming out? And we talk about print pattern and surface design, because those 4 categories really are what as designers are looking for to understand what's new, what's next, and how do we take what we're doing and keep it moving forward and looking fresh. So I do that, and then I travel the world, giving that presentation, and I do that twice a year, each edition, January and September. And now it's grown to giving the tours while I'm there, because people know that I know the halls. That we're going to have a big change though when September comes. I'm really excited. We just had a meeting where they sent me a deck, so some newness is coming. So stay tuned.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, you can't just tease that. You have to tell us.
I don't know at all what it is. Yeah, we're having some more meetings, but they sent me the deck and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a change. So there'll be some changes, but it's a big show, as you know, and there's a lot of information. And so my goal is really to take it all in, and coming from the design side, to sift it through our sieve, if you will, and to give it back out in a more digestible way, because you see a lot, as you both know, when you're there. So how do you come back and know what to do with it all,
I mean, and to have to discern all of this information and then boil it down to these 4 categories, like it's all in my brain, but it's kind of
Yes.
just jumbled in there and it's like fizzy.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
we're about to
Exactly.
head to High Point.
Yeah.
So what should we be looking for? What do you think is going to be the big deal at High Point, like color
Well,
wise,
of course,
trend wise?
it's really, of course, it's going to be kind of difficult to say because we live in this world now where things are changing daily, and we're
I
just trying to
know.
keep our hands around it. But I definitely think that given our usual responses, what I saw, one of the things I just gave this presentation last night for the New York chapter of IFDA, the reportage that I just did at the at the January market. So it's kind of hot off the presses because it takes me a little bit of time. So I usually finish it, end of February, beginning of March, and then start doing the presentations. Is that there's certainly some specific kinds of color that will continue. The green family is going to continue, so we'll continue to see the greens in terms of color, terracottas and clays. All that
Mm,
warm side of the palette continues to be necessary. I think some of that has to do with our need for connection. Those are colors that really resonate with us. There's this wonderful range of mid-range blues that we talk about as being that chambray, like your comfortable chambray jeans,
yeah.
that really go with everything. They look great, of course, with coastal, which isn't the normal place, but they actually are moving across the categories. And so there's that range. But what the big thing I think is going to be, and I saw it at the last I saw it at the last High Point, is what we're calling the not so boring beige.
Huh.
When you don't really know what's happening, a lot of people return to neutral, right? And the browns and the beiges and the taupes are still our core colors.
Oh,
But what we see that gives them the evolution, the freshness, is lots of texture. So you're
okay.
going to see lots of reasons to reach out and touch, lots of means to engage with the product because everything on a screen is the same, right? And if we
Hmm.
get in person, you want to be able to engage with the product. So it calls you out to touch these tweeds, these higher bouclés, these fluffy fabrics, these longer haired fringes, sculpted carpets, and things like that that really make you want to touch it, make you want to reach out. Highly tufted and then recessed areas on carpets. Carpets really are gorgeous and looking like art. We've been calling it the art underfoot for a while. We've seen a lot of bas relief in art. Again, more texture. Those kinds of things are really, I think, when we're not quite sure what to do, we kind of move into those areas, and we want that connectedness as human beings. Part of why the greens are continuing, is that biophilic connection for us. And the ones that are, I mean, there's some really sharp citrusy ones coming out of Europe, but I think we're going to remain in the more vegetal range, and the earthy greens are going to be the way to go. And they're, if you think of green, it's a neutral. Every flower in the garden has a green stem, so it can be used in all kinds of ways in design. You just have to be creative with it.
Just like
And
cheetah's a neutral.
yes, well, there's a lot of animal print still coming out of Europe as well. Absolutely, we're seeing stripes really bold. We're seeing lots of bold graphics. I don't know if we're going to see those here as quickly. I think we're
Okay.
going to be a little quieter for a little longer, especially given just this anxiety and the unevenness and unknown that we are
No,
dealing with right now.
it's funny. Like now that you say it, that makes total sense.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know why. I think because I'm in my red era, I was
There are
expecting
a
you
lot
to
of
say
reds.
red.
There are a lot of reds. But I'm wondering if those are going to translate here as strongly. If they do, like over there, there could be a beautiful red velvet sofa that big,
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking as like a pushback. Like we
Right.
need bold
Well, see, there's
thought.
always both sides. There's always
Yeah,
both sides
yeah.
when something happens. So we do have reds. They're bluer. They're really intense. They're very passionate. Like our blood is
Like
boiling.
your
They're very,
lipstick
yeah,
red.
yeah.
Yeah. And
There
I
are
think I
those.
just we have a
And
client right
orange.
now that likes red. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm very much in that mindset. So I'm
Gotcha.
I'm biased.
And there's orange. The trend, moving, if you go into the really sort of more those that we call the early adapters on the trend side, from the terracottas and the clays, there are going all the way to the soft blushes, which we call pressed powder. So you think of like pressed powder for your face. Exactly. And then going to the opposite end, the pushback end, you've got these bold oranges, these very citrusy oranges and yellow.
Mm,
There's a lot of yellow.
see, that's
And I was
exciting.
just in
That's
Milan like
exciting.
3 days ago. I
Oh
was in
yeah.
Milan. And the Milan show certainly had those kinds of colors, as well as this beetroot, which I just posted on my Instagram.
Ooh.
really rich, beautiful purple, deep burgundy.
Yeah.
And that's definitely everywhere. We saw it in Europe last year, and now we're continuing to see more of it this year. And stone, marble, all that kind of natural
Yes,
stuff from the
marble.
earth. Lots of stones and not marbles, and color. Not the black ones, not the white ones, but color stone, the nature colors of stone.
So trend forecaster, and then I know, Melissa, you probably have questions, but I'm just like, I can't stop. So trend forecaster, is this, I'm just like, I'm so intrigued because it sounds so glamorous. I know. And then you're like, and I'm traveling and I'm here and I'm there. But is this something that you're like, I'm a trend forecaster now?
Yeah.
Or did someone say to you, I feel like you're a trend, like,
Oh,
did you make
no.
this, you carved this out for yourself?
I carved this out because
Just like
I came out
everything
of,
else we do. You carve it out for yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
I come out of fashion, and one of the things that I was told very early on in my fashion career by a president of a company at the time was that I was very good with color, which I know I love color. I mean, literally, it makes me salivate. And there's this, I live for color. It's a connection. Why I'm in my blue sweater today. And also one of the things that he said to me, which always stuck with me, is I have the gift of gab, but I'm very good at taking what we do as creatives, and I think it's something that designers really have to cultivate. As designers, a lot of what we do comes from our gut, comes from our heart. It's something that is really intangible.
And it's hard to verbalize and explain.
But making it tangible for the customer, for your client, is paramount to helping bring them on board. And I can do that. I do have the ability to talk about not why, I just feel it's purple, but why is it purple? Well, we have something that we call SPENT when we start working on trends. And SPENT is an acronym, and it stands the S for social, the P for political, the E for economic, the N for nature, the T for technology. And those are the 5 key areas that we are always looking at, reading about, investigating to determine what's going to happen, because all of us are taking all that in all the time. And and we land in very specific kinds of buckets depending on where we live and who we are and the level of the market that we are, and what our lifestyle is. And so we take all of that and we look at what those influences are on what's happening. And I'll give you an example, like the social. We look at art, what's happening in the world of art. I'm very cold. My friends call me the culture vulture. I'm always at a museum, a gallery, a theater. Tonight I'm going to the theater. Concerts, music, whatever's going on in the world of creativity, because those people usually are pushing the envelope. And I used somebody recently in our most recent talks. I used Taylor Swift and that tour that she just did, where she made $1 billion with a B dollars. So she influenced the music industry in a huge way. People went out and bought clothing that she had, or colors she was wearing, all the friendship bracelets that were
All those
being exchanged,
bracelets.
all of that. But she didn't stay there. And this to me was what was intriguing. When she decided to make a film, she brought people back to the theater. People had not been going to the theater, after COVID. We could see everything in streaming on our TVs, on our sofas. So people weren't going. But by doing that, people went 2 and 3 times to see it. People who didn't go to her concert and people who did. So that meant she made an impact on a whole nother sector. And I'm just, so we're constantly looking at how those things connect with what we're thinking about, who we are, where we want to spend our money, the kinds of things we want to have around us in our spaces. That's what all of this is teaching us. And so that's how we do it. It's not it's not a crystal ball. It really is a lot of work. I am a voracious reader. My mom says I came out of the womb asking why. And so I want to know not what it is only, but why it is. And putting those two things together is what I use a lot for trends. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about socially and politically. Those are your S and P. So right now, have to be crazy. Like we're in a very feisty political environment, I think, here in the US. And then also social media, especially when you're looking at trends, I feel like they cycle through so quickly. Like they were out last season, but now they're back in. And I just feel like there's this constant narrative about what's in and what's out. Like, How does that influence your thinking?
We talk about that all the time. And when I train artisans, I use a very simple method. We talk about trends as something like it's like a horizontal line that's long lasting, that moves along. It may evolve and change, but it moves along. What you're talking about for me is fads, things that go up and down, which is the vertical line very quickly. And you can make a lot of money if you can get on a fad at the right time or be the beginners of a fad. But you need to know it very well because it dies just as quickly. When I was working at the Limited, the owner of the Limited was Les Wexner, and we'd be in a meeting, and he would say it's going to drop dead at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. I mean, fads can be that specific in terms of how they end, right? And so, if you as a manufacturer or maker can't handle that kind of timing, then you don't need to be chasing fads. You need to be figuring out what you do to be on trend, to be part of because the definition of trend is the direction in which things will tend to move. And that's all we're doing is really looking at what are we seeing and where do we see that direction.
I have never thought about the difference between fad and trend. To me, those are synonymous.
They are not.
That's a very important difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because people as designers, they ask us all the time, like, do you follow trends? What do you think about trends? And we're like, no, we're timeless, blah, blah.
Right.
Bullshit. Sorry. We do follow trends. We want to know what the trends are.
Right.
But
you don't want to be trendy.
We don't want to be trendy, but really fads are almost like the 4-letter word.
Yeah, you don't want to be a part of.
Fads
you don't not in an interior because you're not going to change your interior like you change your bracelet.
Yeah. And I've never thought about the difference, but trends are not inherently wrong or bad.
Not at all.
It is a phenomenon.
Exactly. It is it is what it is.
Bad, not necessarily good.
Right. Doesn't have to be. There can be good fads and bad fads. A lot of bad fads end up with things that end up in the fast fashion, trash in the world kind of stuff, right? And so I think we are it is incumbent upon us as the creatives in this world to put out quality product that has lasting sustainability and is beautiful, so that the surroundings that you create for your clients are ones that really give them a respite, give them a place of being well, because that whole idea of wellness is much bigger than just your actual health. It's your mind, your body, your spirit. And so the spaces that are created by designers, and certainly we've been talking a great deal about neuroaesthetics and that kind of thing, they really have physical impact on you. And it's necessary to surround yourself with things that will center you and calm you and make you happy, places you want to be, places you want to come back to,
Absolutely. So we talked earlier about fast fashion and the fact that just was no longer, like the concept of fast fashion was no longer in alignment with what you believe.
Right.
So what advice would you give to an interior design business owner that is building her business to be both profitable but aligned with her values? Like, is there some advice you could give someone that's just starting?
Well, I think we all have our own DNA, if you will, that is our taste, to use that word, that is our aesthetic, that gives us that point of difference between someone else. We can do something similar, but there's something you bring to it that adds that little spark, that flair. And to be in touch with that, to understand what that is, and to be able to bring that out to your clients, I think is amazing. I am always in awe of my dear friends that are interior designers, because you all are, equal parts psychologist and psychiatrist and mom and best friend and all of these things that you have to do to deal with clients in a meaningful way, to really get into who they are and what they need, and to bring, beauty and wellness into their lives. And so for when you're starting out, I think the education that I spoke about earlier, going out to the markets and going out to the showrooms and going out to learn about product and to understand the difference between this and that, to know, when the kinds of things that are going to be good quality versus the kinds of things that are going to break down, in 5 years or whatever. educating yourself, going behind the scenes when you're at market and learning about how to, I mean, it's one of the things that they do when they come to Paris. They get into those old houses that are 100 years old during Deco off, and they
Love
learn
that.
about how you make the textiles. You see them weaving, you see them dyeing, you understand what it takes to create something. You bring that knowledge and that expertise and to your client, and you can tell them this is the difference between this printed fabric and this jacquard, right? And
Mhm.
that's what I think designers need to value, that, because otherwise you're constantly in conversation and competing with the internet. You need to understand space and proportion, you know, because they don't, you know.
Right.
And so those kinds of things around education are necessary. So those are the kinds of things that I always talk to people about, really becoming the best you as a designer that you can be, so that you bring something to the table. There's a reason for your being.
Hmm.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it.
So, Melissa, we're coming up on our half hour here. Do you have any wrap up
Yeah,
questions? I have
I think
a
you
couple
kind of
more.
answered it, but I think for design, and I'm not a designer myself, so I'm always so curious how, people who are attracted to color and attracted to shape and attracted to texture, how do you cultivate your eye? Where are you traveling? What are you reading? Like, what are, you talked a little bit about education, but maybe what are some things that are relatively easy for people all over the listeners all over the country that they
Right.
can pick up on to cultivate that kind of trend setting and, well, that vision that you
Mhm. I think certainly being aware of what's available to you. There's lots out there in terms of the magazines and the online information for what's going on and who the movers and the shakers are. Right? You can first of all do that. But I mean, even keeping up with color from somebody as simple as the paint companies, the Bears, the Benjamin Moores, the Sherwin Williamses of the world, and being aware of what they do with color, who's the best color, for what you're making or doing. Understanding, as I say, fabrics and textiles. So going out and learning about that from the showrooms and the trade shows. But also, I think like I said, I love art. And I'm always going to, my partner, thank God, Brian is also a designer. He was a menswear designer at Brooks Brothers for the last 15 years. He's just retired. So we both have this passion. We live in New York. So we're always at a
When
gallery.
we had dinner with you guys,
Yeah,
do you remember?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So we've had the pleasure of meeting him.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like we're a dynamic duo in the fact that we like to do those things. I feel really blessed that I have somebody in my life that loves to do that same kind of stuff that I do. But the galleries and the museums, I think, are very important, because, as I said, I think art and what's happening in art really does. It's one of those zeitgeist things that comes under that S for social. In terms of what I'm reading right now, I'm reading Lee Idlecourt, who is one of my idols. She's a big trend forecaster in the world. She does Trend Union is the name of her company, and I have worked with Lee since I was in the fashion industry. We used to buy her trend books and things back then, but she's done a beautiful book called Proud South. Where she just highlights all of these amazing designers in all kinds of categories from all over the world. It's a beautiful book. I also have a dear friend, Keith Recker, who's written a book called True Colors, and it's all about natural dyeing. So when you're talking about color, you can learn about what makes a color. And I love that when I work with artisans. That's one of the things I really love, when they pull out their grandmother's recipes and we go out in the back in the woods and pick certain barks that are going to give us this color. I love that. That's like, you know. um, and so, educating yourself in that way. I certainly love movies, so I keep up with what's going on in the zeitgeist of, what's streaming and what's going on, who's hot. We really liked Paradise, which we just finished. I liked and that was interesting because that speaks to the future, and it's kind of a dark thriller, if you will, and there's a lot of that out there where they're looking at the future as very stark and very dark, and I'm wondering, is that really where we're moving towards? So, we're weighing and having those questions. I love talking to other designers. I love talking and going out to dinner and just hashing it out. Yesterday, we had a really good design conversation following my reportage just about the state of our industry. While I was in Milan, there are lots of great design, conversations going on about, are we going in circles? Are we doing the right thing? There's all kinds of stuff being talked about. So I think getting out in the world, those kinds of things happen wherever you are, and being part of that. So I'm a voracious gatherer of information.
Yeah, you make it seem easy.
hmm
I mean, I love that because you asked earlier, like, why did you start this podcast? For the same reason, because I want to hear from other people that are doing amazing things. I
Yeah.
want to hear what they're doing. So, like, this is amazing. Like, get out and
Get
go
out.
look for the bark that makes that color. Like,
That's
oh my
it.
God.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think we're a creative industry, and I don't want to see us pushed in the way that fashion got pushed so far into, what was the margin that we lost sight of what is the product,
And that is so, it's dangerous and
It is.
it's easy. Like
It's
that
so
can happen
easy.
so easily for us, even just on a
Mhm.
day to day, because we're very much in the business.
Right.
And this is a business.
Right.
It is creative, but it is
Mhm.
a business. And so we're always looking at the numbers,
Right.
but we're also looking at efficiency around the design.
Mhm.
And that can be dangerous too, because
Mhm.
you stop
Mhm.
looking for those things that make the difference between a print and a jacquard.
Right. Exactly.
You
Exactly.
forget. It's
Yes.
easy to forget.
It's so easy. It's so
yeah.
easy. And that's what I was watching happen in fashion. And I look at it now and I walk into stores and I'm just, my heart breaks sometimes because I can tell. I was having this conversation just last night because I was in it for so long. I can tell when something has been designed on a computer, whether it's been fit on a human body. And that's all the things I learned from the masters at the
Man,
time that
I
I
don't
was in
wanna
it.
know.
And I value that knowledge. I value that
Yes.
knowledge,
Yeah, but it can almost be, I don't know, not depressing, but like, I don't
It's
know,
just
maybe like
it's
kind of sad.
it is. Well, for me, it is a little sad, but it is
But
different. I
also
mean, not
inspiring.
yeah, yeah. If you want to know, certainly the information's out there for you to know. And I encourage. I always say intellectual curiosity to the kids that I work with in the schools. Have a lot of intellectual curiosity. Don't
Yes.
stop at the first page of Google when you're looking for something, dig deeper. Try to find the history of art, the history of design, the things you might be creating. You think it's the first time it's come around. I could probably tell you 3 other times in history that we've seen that.
Yeah. Are we
Go
going in
find it.
circles? Yes.
Go find it. Understand it and understand why, because it also comes back because many of the same kinds of things are happening in our general day-to-day lives. In our, there's things that do repeat. And so why do we find ourselves here? Why does this thing feel right for this time? That's a really, those are really big questions. And there's a lot of wonderful books on fashion that people can also just go through and read, learn about the good designers, the ones that, that have been around, not the ones that just popped up on Instagram, but somebody who's really built a history and a legacy in the industry and understand how and why, if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Yes. I mean, I have a feeling that most of our listeners are extremely interested in that. So I think you're on the right track. But I guess just to close this out and for a little more inspiration, you travel a lot for work.
I do.
So I'm making an assumption that you travel for pleasure every once in a while. Maybe.
Once in a while, yeah.
Okay, so where are you going for pleasure? Maybe not to turn your brain off, but just to for space.
No, we're planning a trip after Maison to Greece. We've never been, and we want to go and just spend 2 weeks. We want to spend a week in Santorini, and then we have friends in Athens, and we're going to spend a couple of days with them, maybe 3 to 4 days, and then I want to go to one other island. So I just want to go and be in the water. I want to eat amazing food, and I want to just sleep and lay in the sun. And I don't want to have to answer any questions about anything and just let things come to me. I want to see history. Brian and I are really good. I want to climb around the ruins. I want to do all that stuff, but I also just want to lay flat and not have to think about anything. So that's our next big trip. I will probably be in the Philippines for 3 weeks working with artisans in July before that happens. That's going to be a very intense trip because I love the idea of working with artisans, but of course you gotta it's high energy. You're always on and you're constantly thinking. You don't have time to really relax.
That headspace and grief. Oh,
Yeah.
you'll find it. It's wonderful. You'll have the
That's-
best time.
Yeah.
You're wearing the right color for it too.
Yes. I'm manifesting.
Yes, you are. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for chatting with us. This has been really great and inspiring.
Oh, good. Thank you both so much for having me. Have a great one. And I hope I see both of you again at Maison soon and probably at High Point.
We're going to see you next week at High Point for sure.
Yeah. All right. Travel safe and keep well.
Thanks, Patti.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on DesignDash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.